We're out here in Carlton Gardens. Again, this is the second scene that I'm going to do today. And over across the road, we've got a whole bunch of these lovely buildings. There's a series of 5 buildings. And one thing I noticed about them is that there's quite a lot of contrast. We've got the white and the darkness of the windows, the shadows underneath the windows as well. And this is one of those scenes where you're going to need to use a bit of negative painting. So I'll show you how to do that. Bring out the whiteness of the buildings and the shadows, and also put in a few extra bits and pieces like some people, some cars, and come up with a beautiful urban landscape. So let's get started. We've got these row of about 5 houses, and there's the 4 which are around about the same height. And to the left we've got one that's a little bit, tiny bit smaller. And what we're going to do is start off with the drawing. I'm still kind of undecided whether to put all 4 or 5 in there. I think I'll actually go with, I think I'll go with the 5. So firstly, let's put in the base of the buildings, roughly about here. Okay, you're gonna have to decide where the horizon line is, but basically where the bottom of the buildings are. Okay, there's a path around about here. You've got cars in the on the road as well. Okay, just boxy sort of shapes that I'll put in there. Okay, it's the front of the car, the back of the car, just a little boxy shape like that. Okay, there's one. You've also got cars coming out of some street off on the side like that as well. And the light source here is very apparent. It's all just running towards the right. So simplifying things down, I am going to separate out all these buildings first. So we've got perhaps one here, the second building. The other buildings to the right are roughly about 2 times the size, of that smaller building to the left. So I'm just placing in the building. So that's the first one, second one, third one, fourth and fifth that may go out of the scene. Okay, they are slightly of different heights, but roughly the same structure, so you don't have to worry too much. Okay, so I'm just going to separate out these buildings into the four little sides like that. Okay, and a bit of this, there's a chimney here on the top of that one to the left. Some of this stuff you really have to exaggerate a touch and omit other details. Look at this, there's this nice dark shadow cast by the chimney on the rooftop. I like that. And solar panels and all that kind of jazz on top of the buildings. I'm not going to bother with that sort of stuff. Okay, but I will get in this other chimney that's sticking out there. It's more sort of facing me, so you can't see the edge of it. There's also some buildings here in the background. Look, I'll put in an indication of that, something like that. There's also another chimney here. Lots of chimneys got off in the distance. But look, it comes to a point where you just think to yourself, look, it's enough detail. Let's continue. And what we're doing is, obviously this is the rooftop where all these chimneys are sitting on, yeah? But we want to bring these down a bit like that. This is the end of the roof. Where the chimneys finish off, that's the end. So I'm putting a darker line, separating that out. And this house has got this kind of shade right there. Okay, simplify that down like that. I mean, it's actually quite, there's all kinds of patterns on it and everything like that. But there's, I mean, if we simplify it down, we've actually got some bushes and stuff underneath. Okay, and some darkness behind. Okay, this can just be a car perhaps turning in or something like that. Okay, just turning to the right. The street is actually more towards the left, but I'll go with this. Okay, cars are just, that car's a little bit shoddy, but we can get away with it. Okay, just scribble in a basic shape and then refine it as we go. Now, shadows underneath the cars. Now, you remember the light source is going to the right. This is a really perfect kind of light source, in my opinion, for this scene, because we can create maximum contrast here, especially with these white buildings. So, scribble in a couple of the cars like that, okay? And not only that, we want to put in some people. I can see 3 fellas waiting at the traffic light here, and they're all dressed in different colors. They're wearing different kind of hoodies. I'm going to just quickly get in a lot of them. Okay. I'll actually make them a bit closer. They could be just walking. They could just be walking closer to the front of the scene. Actually, I think this might be better because I've drawn them too large. Okay, and I kind of make them facing in this direction, arm held out or something. Could be holding a bag. Darkness here for the legs, like that. Okay, and this is also going to be great because I can then use the light source to indicate a bit of shadow to the right of these people walking through. Okay, and I mean, we're sitting in the park right now anyway, and there's a bit of grass here, so these people can just be walking through the park. A couple of these poles here sticking out of the ground. Okay, just walking through. Okay, alright, fiddling around with that stuff too much. Let's work on the buildings. I'm actually going to leave out all these power lines and stuff like that. I just think the power lines are too jarring. Maybe put them in later, but it's not a big deal. So if we look at each building, there's 2 floors. There's 2 floors and then there's a roof. And the roof it's a little bit shorter than the other floors. Okay, so I'm studying that and I'm separating out the floors of the building. So we've got 1, 2, and we've got the roof. Let's do the same for the one to the right here. So 1, 2, and we've got the roof here, which has a bit of architectural detail up on the top. I like that. Lots of this little architectural detail. I'm scribbling it in, really, not with much effort, just a little scribble like that. Okay, and some of this, the whiteness of this building, of these buildings as well, the whiteness of these buildings is going to form the contrast. I'm just going to leave it really just white when I'm painting, cut around it with some of the cerulean blue that I'm planning to use later. Okay, all right, so that's the top of that building. There is this roof here that is darker. Just shade that a little bit like that. Got this other roof here which starts up a bit higher, and I will put in a few little lines like that for the roof. Okay, let's have a look at this one on the right. We've got a line here up the top, and this one goes even higher than the second one, slightly higher, that top of the building. Semicircular shape, looking at the shapes. Don't worry about the building itself, just look at the shapes. It's a rectangle. We've got another 2 floors as well, and these floors aren't really separated as well. I love really love the windows on this the 4th building here. They're so sharp, and I'm tempted to actually spend more time drawing them in, but I always have to remember as well not to get too carried away. I can spend too long on the drawing and forget that I am actually doing a painting. So just a bit of darkness there for these windows. Okay. Shade that in with the pencil, and I use a pretty thick pencil when I draw normally, so that I don't get too it forces me not to get too detailed. Okay, let's cut across there, leave that bit of white, and there's these frames of the nice little frames of the windows that you can just leave white. Okay, it's not much, but it's something. Okay, oh, there's actually a little shade or something here as well that's casting a bit of shadow underneath, and this is something we also need to take note of. We need to take note of the shadows, because the shadows on the buildings that's what's going to make everything come together. Okay, like that. This one is actually a little shorter. This is the building all the way to the right. Okay, all the way to the right, and line across there, and this little rooftop like there as well. Can't really see too much, but what I do see is a nice shadow here. Look at that, cast by that building here. So I'm just penciling in a bit of that shadow. Okay, now what we have left essentially of these buildings is to put in the windows and the bits of darkness for the shadows. So here's one window, here's 2, 3. We got it. 1, 2, 3. 3 windows. And we can do this one here, another window. These are quite tall sort of windows. 2 and 3. We've got lots of trams running through this street here in Melbourne, and if I draw one in here, there's no point. I'm going to lose the plot on what's going on in here. So I am going to put in a little indication of the shadow here. So just a touch of that to indicate that's where the shadow is. Okay, and the sun is coming from the left, top left, so we're getting some shadows underneath the the sun's starting to change a little bit. I've got to be quick. A little bit underneath each floor like that, and then on the left hand side, as the sun's roughly to the left as well. Here as well, there's a bit of darkness underneath this building, and all this shading does help for later, so I don't have to think too much when I'm painting. Okay, like that. There we got these kind of arches on this building. It's quite beautiful, but I can't spend too much time doing this or I'll be here all day. Okay, let's put in a bit of this little detail on the windows as well, behind there. There we go, 1, 2, 3. And the one below here as well. Let's just separate this out to that first floor. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Finding ways to separate the building up into smaller shapes will make your drawing more accurate and will make it easier for you, because then you're just drawing the larger shapes and separating out the larger shapes into smaller shapes rather than actually drawing a building. Okay, we're nearly done with the drawing. I just have to start putting in this last little bit of detail for this building on the back, on the right here. And this is a point where I start getting actually a little bit lazy. So let's just get this done. Okay. And we'll draw in the bottom part there, like that. And that's the bottom of the building. And we've got some shadows obviously underneath here as well. Okay. Cast from the light. Okay. And I think what I'm gonna do, why not? I'm just gonna get in a tram here. I can see it looks like a tram running through from the right, and it may just be coming in like this. There we go. Can't skip a tram in Melbourne. We've got to have something in there. It's a tram. There we go. Not too much like one, but you get the picture. Okay, let's get cracking with the painting. Bit of cerulean blue, using it at quite a little bit more, probably about 30%, 40% paint, and the rest of it water, because my idea here is to draw out the lights on the buildings. So extra contrast. And with cerulean blue anyway, it's a very light color even when you're using it with little water in there. So I'm just using the tip of my brush, and it's crucial when you have when you're using watercolors to have a little mop brush like this. It's going to help you so much to cut around shapes. Okay, and you know, here you got the top of this building that has this little white thing there. I can just cut around that with the cerulean blue. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. Cut around the top of that structure, that building there again. Okay, I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but you get the idea. Okay, even this building, it's kind of like a grayish color if you ask me, this second one. But I will imply that later. For now, all I want to do is just get in some of this blue for the top of the scene. Okay, and you're negatively painting the shapes in of the buildings. Okay, and essentially that just means you're cutting around what's already there. Okay, so there we have it. We've got the sky in, and the next stage now is working a bit on the buildings. And look, the buildings to the right are actually of a slightly off-white color. I didn't notice that before, but they have a slightly off-white color. So I have actually this color here called buff titanium, and I'm going to add this in because they just look a bit, I think they just need a little bit of something in there. Okay, so that they don't look the same as the other ones. So I'm going to drop in a bit of that buff titanium. It's an off-white color essentially. Okay, and I'll just paint across like that. And you know, I leave a bit of white where the paper connects with the blue, and that allows me to stop that blue from running down the page. Okay, but I'm going to leave. Let's have a look here. We'll probably go and put in a tiny bit of grayish color, because I do have some gray here on the palette. It's just a mixture of all the other colors that I have left over. I'm going to just drown this one in a bit of gray. Right. Hope this all connects on together. And at the moment, we are not, like I said, we're not getting in any details or anything like that. We are just getting in some basic colors, a background wash for the light. Okay, got these three fellas here walking across the park, and I thought I'd paint them in Okay, and I'm just painting in a bit of the road here as well. I think I've extended out that road a bit more, like here, so that it makes sense. These people are walking closer to the front of the scene. And the buildings to the left, right to the left, it's kind of tricky to see what color it is. It's like a dulled down yellowy brown color. Probably, I'm going to just use a bit of yellow ochre for this. That's a chimney as well there. Just a touch of vibrancy that's missing in this scene, and I want to add in a bit of color there. Okay, there's trees and stuff, no problem, just cut around them. Alright, now moving down to the front of the page, I'm going to blend this all off into a greenish color, and I'm just mixing up a lighter green, nice sort of lighter green here in the foreground. We've got lots of vibrant green grass, but I will put in a bit of this other color just to dull it down a touch. Just a duller green in here actually, and I can hopefully just mix this in. There we go, that's good. That, not too much effort, just a quick wash of green. Okay, something simple like that, and we'll give this a second to dry. Okay, but a lot of it really up the top has started to dry already with the buildings, and this is where I can actually begin to work on the shadows. Okay, so the shadows of the buildings, let's go ahead and I will pick up the color. Let's mix up a nice darker color of, I've got some blue, I've got a bit of blue, I've got a bit of brown, perhaps a touch of red as well. Blue, brown and red. Okay, a bit more blue perhaps in here. Even if I get a purplish shadow, I think that would be quite nice as well. Okay, but I will put in a bit of whatever greyish colour you have on the palette as well, just to dull it down a touch. Looking a bit too purplish. And I'm using a lot of water in this mix here for the shadows. I want them to be dark, but I don't want them to be too dark, because the windows need to come through. The darkness of the actual windows is the highest contrast here. So let's try this. It's not dark enough. Let me pick up some more paint. Okay, maybe a bit more. And it's trial and error. You're just adjusting as you go to find that right value. Okay, underneath, a bit of that shadow there. I've still not managed to get a dark enough value here for some reason. That's interesting. Let me just pick up some. What else do I have here? Maybe a bit of sepia. Let's mix in a bit of sepia here. There, that's better. A bit of sepia and purple. Okay. You still want this mix to be transparent. I'm going to simplify it just across like that. Bit of darkness for the shadow there. And down the left side of this building like that. Here as well, left side of that building, and moving across to the right. And the flat brush does wonders for this. Just get it in one brush stroke. Okay, underneath it here as well, there's a bit of darkness that I will imply like that. And this building as well, I'm going to put in more darkness, a bit more sepia, a bit more blue and sepia. Okay, it's really quite dark in this section of the building in there, and there's a shadow of the structure of that whatever you call it, that the rooftop, these little pointy bits casting a shadow across the roof as well. Okay. Let's just put in a bit of that darkness here. Okay, like that. Here. Here. Sharper line there, like that. Shadow pattern's actually quite complicated in there. You just have to simplify this down and make sure that there is a bit of darkness inside, but that. Great. I'm gonna darken down this car a touch and get the wheels in as well. The edges of the wheels to the right hand side, just darken that down a bit like this. Okay. And also darken the bottom of the car down so that we've got a shadow running across the ground like this. Okay. Only that we've got this car here in the background too. I can just do the same thing. Connect that shadow on to the car to the right. There. There. Pretty dark values. Okay. But I'm creating the feeling of light on the backside of the car. Okay. Alrighty. Let's have a look what else we can put in here. Let's put in some greens for the bits of the trees and stuff. Not trees, but there's like little shrubs and things running through here. So I'm just mixing up a bit of green and yellow together to create some little shrubs in there. Like that. Feathering that through around the edges of the car. Yeah, a bit of darkness as well, why not? Behind the car. And the darkness behind the car will help to bring it out. Okay. Again, just a bit of negative painting will do wonders here. Okay, got to be so careful just to leave that white in there so that it does look a bit like a car. Like that. Just a bit of cutting around. Good. Some more little bits of paint up here for this tree or whatever. There's parts that are going up there into the roof. Okay. I'm going to pick up some of this darker colour that I had before and start working a bit on other shadows as well. So the top of for example, the top of this building, you've got some shadows running on the right hand side of the chimney. Let's just try this. Oops, that's way too much paint. I've mucked it up a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Let's just go with it. Let's just go with it like that. Casting a shadow there. Okay. Just turn this into another sort of chimney. Cast by objects that are not in this scene as well. The windows as well. Let's get in the frames of some of these windows. Okay, a bit darker. And that's what I meant by saving these final darkest contrasts right to the end. Okay. Bunch of windows there. Classy looking sort of windows, aren't they? There's actually some of these railing or whatever coming down here. It's quite dark as well. I'm just trying to do this quickly. I don't want it to look too forced. Something like that. Okay? Right. So those are those windows kind of done. You know, you also notice in the top of the building you might get little bits and pieces of detail as well. Just trying to put in perhaps some dry brush strokes, and especially now I've kind of realized there is a little bit of colour in the roof here. Forgot about that before, but just a slight wash, darker wash up there for the roof, which I will paint in. That. Just a slight wash, and I'll probably get in some line work in there as well later on. Let's go back to that darkest wash again, darkest colour, and put in some of the details of the windows in here. There's a window, kind of. Another window there. Another window there. I'm simplifying, of course. I have to simplify out here. Otherwise you're going to be doing this all day. And this one I'm going to use to cut around the figure, this person standing here. Use that bit of darkness there to cut around and get a softer shadow running through here as well. Okay. It's kind of like that shadow of the building to the left is cast to the one here on the right, like this. Join this all on nicely together so it looks a bit more watery. A bit of line work up the top there and detailing, you know. Bit of dry brush strokes. Okay. Like that. This building's going to be a little bit easier because I just need to get the darkness of those windows in. I'll get a bit closer with my brush and just paint some of this in quickly. That. Probably the sharpest and the darkest contrast out of all the buildings out here. This darkness on the windows for this fourth building. Interesting looking windows as well. And if you've drawn it in inaccurately in the first place, you can just just continue on. Oh, we've got this one here, this building. Okay, let's get in the shadow of that building. Like that. Bit of that shadow cast on the roof. Like that, there, and there. Okay, we need a bit more brown in there. It's turned into kind of bluish mix. I want some more brown. There we are, that's better. There we go, just some more of these shadows. And because we are getting to the edge of the scene, you know, I tend to use that as an excuse at times to just reduce down the level of detail in here, because we are not needing a focal focus on the edges. but the tram has disappeared, and I really can't remember what colour that tram was. But I can remember that the windscreen was a little bit darker, so I can... Oh, I hear a tram coming. Now, quick look at it. White, yellow and green and stuff like that on it. Put in a bit of green maybe. Okay, there we go. Bit of green on that tram, like that. And on the bottom of it's like white actually. It's funny when you don't even think about these things. You see them every day, but you don't even notice them. And it's got a yellow sort of door like that, you know. It kind of looks like a Melbourne tram. Okay, looks a bit like one. Let's emphasise that windscreen a touch more. And at the base of the tram, I'm going to just, I'm not going to do much. Just put a line at the base like that, darker line. There. Just mop this one up. Mop that bit of colour up there. Okay, I think that's decent. I will put in... Let's have a look. What else can we potentially do here? The figures. We haven't worked on the figures yet. A bit of colour for the figures. I've got some of this interesting purplish colour. This little purplish colour, which I'll put in for this person. Just like a lighter colour, cooler kind of colour. Like that. Okay, for the shirt or whatever, I'll put in a bit of yellow for this one here. I remember there was one fella that had a yellow jacket on, so that's why I'm using that yellow. But it's kind of turned into a green anyway. Doesn't matter. Maybe some Naples yellow will help. It's a lesson, you know, with when you're using yellows, they can very easily turn into greens if you're not careful. Okay. And let's put in that one in the middle. We can probably just leave that one in the middle white, actually. Yeah, let's just do that. Dark colour, blue and brown mixed together to create the darkest value that I can imagine. And let's put in the legs to really seal this one, get these figures connected to the ground. I'm trying to detail them a bit more, but it's a bit tricky. Okay, but they do look like people. Okay. And I'll put a little shadow at the base of them as well, just running across the ground. Okay, just to the right like this. Bit of a shadow for those figures. Maybe have some running in a weird direction like that. They're not always so perfect. People will stand in slightly different directions from each other. Okay. Not quite happy with that shadow. I'm just going to try and redo it. That'll have to do. Bit of red for the faces. Touch of red. Like this. There. Dry off a bit. Okay. Got some people in here. You know, we could this person could have like a little bag or something there that they could be carrying with them as well. So, you know, connected on with the body. I'm going to just redo perhaps this wheel in the background. It's your chance to just really rejig a few details. Draw out a few extra details, and I hold the brush further down in order to do this because it makes it more it makes it more accurate, easier to put in these details especially. Okay. Around the windows, I thought, look, just add a bit of extra darkness to the left side, perhaps like that. There. The edges of the building as well. Some of the edges have an extra bit of darkness to them. Here, I think as well, we can just draw out some extra darkness underneath this building. The great thing with watercolors is as long as you start out light, you can put in all of these darker contrasts afterwards and it's still going to make sense. You do have to preserve the light in there. There's all these details, even in the windows, just, it's quite, I mean, if you really get into it, it can be intimidating. But I, for example, will pick out a touch of detail in this window, like this, and I will draw it in with my brush very, very carefully. Okay, like that. Smudge it off if it starts looking too stuck on. Okay, it's another window in here, like that, like that. You know, you're shaping them as you go, detailing and shaping as you go, and building up the detail, being patient and building it up until it starts resembling something. Put in a bit of this detail for the tram, the windows of the tram, like that. There we are. I think something in the foreground, maybe some more poles and stuff here. Like, I did draw a bunch of them in, like here. There's one pole, couple, these sort of sticking out of the ground for the start of the park or whatever. And some perhaps little perspective lines on the ground. Let me just see if we can do this. Like that maybe, and like this. Just some quick little perspective lines on the ground. You do see also on the road there's just these little, like, places where people wait for the trams, and I can just pick up a smaller brush and indicate some of these. I mean, they're really fences for the buildings in the back, as well as like fences and areas where people wait for the trams. So just some of this stuff here I think will add in a bit of detail and interest. Okay. So some hair for these figures, a little bit of hair. There's 3 people that I had on there before, just remember I changed them around a little bit so they're kind of just facing forwards, facing us. See their faces. And that's it, we are finished.